The first bounce back player for the 2024 fantasy season, a player set to have a much better 2024 than he did in 2023, is Josh Jacobs, currently being taken consistently in the late third, early fourth rounds as the RB16 off the board in ESPN leagues. I am a massive fan of Josh Jacobs at this price point, as we have seen him outperform that RB16 ADP every year he's been in the league on a points per game basis, except for last year, of course, when he was the RB18 in fantasy points per game. But even then, it really feels like you're still buying into Josh Jacobs at his historical floor from being in Vegas. But now Jacobs is in Green Bay, an offense that over the last 5 years under head coach Matt LaFleur has been uber friendly to the running back position because of the offense's efficiency and explosive capability. And there are two avenues here for Jacobs to find success, both of which easily outperform an RB16 price, just at various different levels. The first is Jacobs becomes a full-on bell cow, just like he was in Vegas. In fact, in 4 out of 5 seasons with the Raiders, Jacobs saw anywhere from 18 to 20 rush attempts per game, plus an additional 2 to 4 receptions per game. So if Jacobs sees that kind of volume in a much better offense with a much better offensive line in Green Bay, with all of those red zone and goal line opportunities, we could see Jacobs return to top 3 fantasy production like he had in 2022. There is a world where that type of nuclear season is possible for Jacobs in 2024. Now, the second and more likely scenario is that Jacobs fits more of the role that we have seen Aaron Jones have, which I won't call a flat-out committee, but we could see Jacobs cede some usage to A.J. Dillon or rookie Marshawn Lloyd, more in the name of protecting Josh Jacobs over the course of an entire season into the NFL playoffs. But I am not opposed to this usage either, because prior to last season, only one running back finished as a top 10 fantasy running back 4 years in a row from 2019 to 2022. Aaron Jones. Matt LaFleur is the one who unlocked Jones as a fantasy asset by utilizing him as a high-end rusher and high-end receiver who operated on efficiency and high red zone utilization. So if Jacobs just gets thrown into the Aaron Jones role in this offense, he'll have more than enough work to be an every week fantasy RB1. It is entirely possible that LaFleur identified Jacobs as a player who can operate the Aaron Jones role plus, since Jacobs is younger, bigger, and just as, if not more, explosive with the ball in his hands. And don't forget that Josh Jacobs is a great receiver too. It's actually a part of his game that we really haven't seen unlocked yet in the NFL. Jones has averaged 67 targets, 400 yards, and 4 touchdowns in the receiving game every year from 2019 to 2022. Jacobs has one season over 350 receiving yards and has literally never scored a receiving touchdown in 5 years in the NFL. There is a balancing act here that if Jacobs sees less work on the ground but more work through the air, a reception is worth 3 times as much as a rush attempt in full PPR leagues. And that work would be extremely valuable for Jacobs as a top 10, potentially even top 5 fantasy running back in 2024. Before we move on, I wanted to let y'all know to head over to 4for4.com and sign up for a subscription today to gain access to the industry's best fantasy rankings from award-winning ranker for accuracy John Paulson. Plus, you get access to our live draft assistant, cheat sheets, trade calculator, articles, and there are additional packages for DFS and betting content too. Make sure to use the code YouTube at checkout to receive 25% off of your annual subscription today. All right, now being drafted around the same range as Jacobs is our next bounce back player in Cooper Kupp, which, given his production over the past couple of years and even throughout different times of the year last year, this ADP is severely discounted for the upside that Cooper Kupp has for fantasy. First of all, the fact that Kupp had by all definitions a quote-unquote bad 2023 is a testament to how insane he was in 2021 and 2022 before he got hurt. Over 12 games played last year, Kupp was on pace for 84 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 7 receiving touchdowns. That is 230 fantasy points, which, just for perspective, would be a career-high fantasy season for Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Drake London, T. Higgins, and Terry McLaurin. And if we remove the one game that Kupp played fewer than 80% of snaps last year, his 17-game pace increases to 90 receptions for over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, or 250 fantasy points, which would also be a career high for Brandon Ayuk, Amari Cooper, and Michael Pittman. And that is considered a bad year for Cooper Kupp. And let's not forget that Kupp was coming back from injury last year, as his 2022 season was cut short by a high ankle sprain that he had to recover from. And then last year he was dealing with a lingering hamstring injury from early August. He tried to come back to practice later in the month, but had a setback. He missed a few games and then honestly just never really looked 100% all year long, even while he was playing. But now he's had a full offseason recover and get back to 100%, and all reports out of training camp are saying that Kupp looks back to his old self and that the Rams offense still clearly runs through him. And then the cherry on top for the Cooper Kupp bounce back this year is the news of Puka Nacua suffering a knee injury that isn't deemed serious and shouldn't affect his week 1 status, but we know how these training camp injuries can linger throughout an entire year, so if this becomes more of a seasonal issue for Puka Nacua, Kupp would be in an amazing spot to have the wide receiver 1 role for Matthew Stafford all back to himself entirely. So again, like Jacobs, Kupp's ADP feels like you're just buying into him at his floor, which based on last year is still a great season for just about any other wide receiver in the league. But if Kupp is all the way back to 100% this year, we know the upside that he possesses in this offense, and it wouldn't shock me at all to see Kupp return to top 5 fantasy production this year. Now, in a very similar situation to Cooper Kupp is another wide receiver poised for a bounce-back 2024 campaign after an injury-riddled 2023. Diontae Johnson's ADP of around wide receiver 35 in the 7th or 8th round is absolutely insane to me given the production that we've seen from him in recent years. In 2020, Diontae posted a wide receiver 21 season averaging 14.8 fantasy points per game. 2021 was his big breakout year as the wide receiver 10 with over 17 fantasy points per game. 2022, he dropped down to 10.5 points per game, but that's what happens when you play with a rookie quarterback who honestly should never have been a starter in the league ever and in a super stale Matt Canada offense. And then 2023, wide receiver 41 again in the same offense, same situation, but did also spend time on IR with a hamstring injury. But now fast forward to 2024, Diontae Johnson is on a new team with the Carolina Panthers. He has a new quarterback who, had a rough rookie season, but is still significantly better than what he had in Pittsburgh. And he has a brand new offensive system that has supported elite fantasy wide receivers over the past 2 years. And that really feels like the most important part here. See, Dave Canales has done absolute wonders for struggling offenses and quarterbacks 2 years in a row. He turned Geno Smith into an MVP candidate, and both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf were top 16 fantasy wide receivers in 2022. And then last year, he gives Baker Mayfield a career high season across the board and also gives Mike Evans the best fantasy season he's seen since 2016. I mean, all you have to do is look at the type of player that Diontae Johnson is. He's just constantly open all the time, and then you compare that to the rest of the receiving core that the Panthers have in a very old Adam Thielen, a 5th-year college breakout in Xavier Legette, a couple other busts from the past few draft classes, and it's just so blatantly obvious that Diontae is by far the best player on this team and should go back to his target hog days from Pittsburgh that made him a fantasy wide receiver 1. And if you're still not totally bought in, don't take my word for it. Listen to what Dave Canales himself said about Diontae Johnson.
As we build our offense, we really try to feature someone. And for us right now, where's Diontae Johnson at? And we have our progressions and we're going to move him around in formation, but the rest of the guys have to come alive as the coverage is dictated.
Oh, and here's the Panthers' new offensive coordinator, Brad Idzik, talking about Diontae as well.
I told Dave, like, we need an X to start with, where, like, if they don't respect him, he's winning. They're wrong. Like, for us, that big of a deal. Like, we put you over there, and they don't have help on that corner. Like, stop.
Yeah.
You showed that for years, like, you made people wrong when they don't help, right?
Right.
At his wide receiver 35-ish ADP in the middle rounds of your drafts, there is no reason that Diontae Johnson should not be a target for every single one of your drafts because there really isn't a player in his ADP range at wide receiver that has the historical track record of fantasy success that he has, plus the high-end target projection for 2024. So it's just one of the easiest smashes in your leagues is just to go out and draft Diontae Johnson. And then lastly, I saved the grossest name for last, but please hear me out on this one. Promise? All right. There is a world where Daniel Jones returns to being a more than serviceable fantasy football quarterback in 2024, like he was in the 2022 season as the QB9 overall. The funny thing about this is that the argument for Jones is actually pretty simple, and it's really just 2 words: Malik Neighbors. The impact that Neighbors is going to have on not only Daniel Jones, but this Giants offense entirely cannot be emphasized enough. Not only is he the best receiver that Jones has ever had, he's the best receiver that the Giants have had since Odell Beckham Jr. And with an offense that has now lost Saquon Barkley and replaced him with just Devin Singletary, I would expect Daniel Jones to throw more than he ever has in his career, on top of the rushing ability that Jones himself brings to the table, as he rushed for over 700 yards in 2022 and was on pace for over 600 rushing yards last year, prior to getting hurt. But just going back to Malik Neighbors for a second, he is about as quarterback friendly as a receiver can possibly be. He is insanely athletic. He has a huge catch radius and can make contested and boundary catches look easy. I mean, he's already doing it in training camp and he did it all over his tape at LSU. He's also incredible after the catch, which is just going to rack up passing yards for Jones on throws where he really didn't do anything. I mean, a 3-yard pass to Neighbors on a slant route that he takes 75 yards to the house still counts as a 75-yard passing touchdown, and those are fantasy points for Daniel Jones. And then there's also the indirect effect that Neighbors is going to have on the rest of the Giants offense. If defenses key in on him by adding additional coverage his way, that opens up areas of the field for Wan'Dale Robinson, who is entering year 2 off his ACL injury and is a very good route runner as well. And we can't forget about the veteran presence of Darius Slayton or the year 2 speedster in Jalen Hyatt, both of whom, may not be good for fantasy themselves, but could help Daniel Jones' season with splash plays and random touchdowns. They also drafted Theo Johnson, a very fun tight end prospect who's very athletic and specialized as a red zone threat in college. So now all of a sudden, because of the addition of Malik Neighbors, players that struggled as centerpieces in an offense can now thrive as complementary pieces, rounding out this offense while also adding some speed and talent. And we can't forget that Brian Daboll is still one of the best offensive-minded coaches in the league. So there's upside here for Daniel Jones to potentially have a career year for fantasy. It is 100% the grossest pick that you will ever make in any of your drafts, but as an upside QB2 or a QB3 in Superflex leagues, for how cheap he's going as basically the last starting quarterback off the board behind rookies and other guys who may not even be the starter all year long, why not take the shot on someone who's produced as a QB1 before and just got a massive receiver upgrade for the 2024 season? And I do have one more massive bounce back player for the 2024 season at the tight end position, which is Kyle Pitts, who has everything set up for the breakout season that we've all been waiting for since his record-breaking rookie year. But if you want to hear the reasons why Pitts is due for a big bounce back year, you can check out this video right up here.